Okay.
How'd you meet Paul Smoker?
Well, I met Paul the first time when I decided to take jazz lessons from him. I was doing my master's at Nazareth,
Mm-hmm.
and I was finishing up around 2010, and so I think I met him in '09, and so I took lessons from him for 3 semesters, and also at that time he needed a pianist for the jazz combo at Naz, so I played for those 3 semesters with the combo as well, and I was his TA for the last semester that I was at Naz too. So yeah, that was when I met him. But I'd heard of him for years and years, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I interviewed Phil, I want to leave it as a surprise for now, but he had a great story of his first impression of Paul Smoker. Do you remember yours? I mean, you went to NAS for the master's program, and you'd kind of heard about him. Did you? What was it like? Meeting him? Did his reputation live up to when you first met him?
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing is, I can't even remember what the reputation. I knew that he was a great trumpet player, and I'd heard people, that had studied with him for years talk about him, and that he was a great teacher, and but yeah, he was one of a kind, and he one of the first lessons with him, I remember him like pulling out a piece of stat paper because he was going to show me like alternate changes for all the things you are, and so I remember him closing one eye and sort of like hatching the measure lines for four lines of music, and him doing like, and I was like, oh, he's done this before, It's like, so, and that was like something I've shown other people too. The alternate changes, basically like using that song as a exercise for understanding tritone substitutions. So I remember too, like my first lessons with him. It had been years since I'd had piano lessons, and and he was really kind, but he was also like he told me what he was hearing, and so it was a little bit difficult process for me to allow someone else into my process to that degree, but I really needed it, and I think that was like a strength of his. Like I think he knew he had so many students, and he knew what everyone needed to work on. He had great ears with that, and he had a lot of resources and a lot of tools. He knew what songs to give people, and what people needed to think about, what people needed to listen to. Yeah, he was great.
So you ended up being his TA as well, and being the piano player in the combo and other projects. Did you have much of a chance to play with him while you were at NAS or after?
Yeah, I did some gigs with him.
Yeah.
There were some events that he did. I can't remember the events, but it was like playing these gigs for, it might have been like Nazareth alumni events, and that he played at, and so me and some other guys that were studying with him at that time did some gigs with him. Yeah, not as much as I'd like to, but I also got to see him play. I went out and saw the Notet a few times,
Yeah.
and yeah.
What did you think about him? We'll talk about more about him as a teacher in a moment or two, but he's just renowned for just the huge sound. What was it like you had in those few gigs, kind of sharing the stage with him? And he's also known as a great improviser. Remember anything from those gigs that really sort of struck you, even with his reputation preceding them?
Yeah, no, I just remember trying to not mess up, and I was pretty into my own. That's why going to hear him perform was such a treat, because I could just listen to him. I was really moved by a Notet show that I saw at Love and Cup in probably 2014, and I just remember the whole set, he started out with a long tone that he he played, and he started it very softly and just grew that note for about a minute before anybody else came in, and then you heard the whole force of his sound, so that was inspiring. I remember that as just like, wow, just as a musical idea that blew me away, because I love, I'm a horn player too, and so long tones, long tones are something that we lean into as brass players and wind players, and so he just started the whole show with this long tone, and as soft as you could get, and then as big as you could get,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was also known as an improviser, and this kind of is this line between teaching and playing. Improv is such a huge part of what you do with Moho Collective, Mighty High and Dry, jazz gigs. Remember any specific lessons he taught you when it comes to improvising, or kind of the impression you got when you were sharing the bandstand with him? Anything on improv that really left a mark for you in your time with him?
Oh yeah. I mean, he gave me one lesson in I think playing bebop heads like Cherokee, and just making an exercise out of playing through those changes, and to keep the motor rhythm going. And so basically, playing in a way that you might not actually end up playing for, on a solo and a performance, but as an exercise, taking those changes and just like just like try to keep that going through the whole thing, and not stopping. And it sort of like forced me to keep the fluidity through those lines, so that I could learn how to connect all those, changes where I might stop, based on whatever was, I was getting hung up on. And so that was a great exercise. And again, that's something I've shared with other musicians too, and people I've given like some jazz improv lessons to. And and also just rhythm, just like, he helped me pay more attention to my own rhythm, and practicing with a metronome, and then also considering the horizontal line, rather than thinking of the changes vertically, like making sure that, back to that earlier concept, but just like keeping the fluidity and continuity of the line going, and making it make sense, rather than having the chord change, whatever chord is happening right at this instance, dictate what I play. Like consider what I had just played and where I'm going to. So, yeah. And in the combo, he was teaching improv the whole time. He was teaching the whole, and I feel like as a teacher, the combo was an improvisatory lesson for him as well, because he had some general ideas about where he was going, but at some point, we'd start the semesters with, let's play this tune and this tune, and then at some point he would say, hey, we always did a focused on an artist or an album. Mm-hmm. And so I think we did an Ornette, can't remember which album it was, but we did an Ornette album, and then we did Wayne Shorter, Adam's Apple, mm-hmm. and we did a show that was mostly Mingus's music. So, and he was, I don't know, he just like had a trust in the process, I think, for figuring out how to put these shows together with his students. And I was also, he brought in an artist, I'm trying to remember, he was from Eastern Europe, maybe a saxophone player, a free jazz player, and that guy came and did a clinic with us, teaching us like sort of like hand symbols for sort of like some free jazz, staples for how some people put music together. Not like chance music, but sort of like with a director, and that was pretty inspiring. And that's something I wanna find out who knows more about that stuff, so I can share that with. I have elementary band students, and I want to share that with them too.
Paul was known for his intense teaching style. What was it like being his TA?
Oh, he was very cool to me. At that point too, he was having some health problems, so he was. There was a rehearsal where his defibrillator went off, and we had to stop rehearsal, and he was in the hospital for a week or two, and so he was he was an intense teacher, and it would come out sometime more in rehearsals. I feel like more than anything, like in private lessons, he was honest, but he was always warm, and he gave a lot, He gave me books. He burned CDs for me. I know he burned CDs for a lot of other students too. Just like, you got to listen to this. He burned DVDs, So I'm not sure if I answered that question, but yeah.
You did. Thanks,
yeah.
man.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about all the things you are, changes, Cherokee, lessons in improv. You're a guy who teaches music, lives and breathes music, improvises all the time on the bandstand. I mean, what if you had to say was the biggest takeaway or the biggest thing you learned or the most important thing you learned from Paul in those semesters?
I think playing with good rhythm, and that's really the main thing. And I had been playing blues music for a long time, and I had dabbled in learning some standards, but he helped me feel like someone who was competent, or emerging as a jazz player, so he helped me with that, but that helped with everything else too. Just like sort of boosted my confidence level and my approach to the instrument. When I approach the instrument, I feel like I'm a different person than I was when I started studying with him, for sure. And there was one more lesson that you'd want to know about. So he at some point, he was just like, you want to be a jazz pianist, but you want to be the jazz musician. But I feel like until you've listened to all of Miles Davis's records and all of John Coltrane's records, you can't really say that. So that was a project of mine, and he was like, go to the library, and so I did that, and I listened to all that stuff as much as I could, and just sort of even had it on shuffle in the background sometimes, just so I could get a taste of all that stuff. And and I asked him, well, what about like Duke Ellington? He was just like, it's impossible. You can't listen to all that music, He made too much music to check it all out. So, you got to listen to it, but you can't listen to all of it. So that was a cool project too. And then at some point, I told him maybe a week later, I told him what Miles I already had, and he was like, okay. He was like, that's cool, because I had checked out and bought a number of Miles's records from different eras. So, but yeah.
Anything I didn't ask about that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think just the impact that there's other students that I know think about him all the time still. Greg Best, Pat Abbott, Emily Champion, Mike Sapienza was, his TA before I was. I know Dave Savine studied with him. So there's a lot of people that, sort of like he's still their teacher. He's still their teacher because of, and they love him a lot. A lot. There's a lot of people. The late and great Sarah Rogers studied with him too, and so yeah, just a shout out to, there's a lot of people that probably, would have loved to have been in this seat for this interview. So just a shout out to all of his students.